The rain hammered against reinforced graphene windows, each droplet a staccato reminder of how fragile human infrastructure had become. Inside the underground hackspace, Dr. Elena Rodriguez's fingers danced across a holographic interface that flickered like a dying firefly, its light casting angular shadows across her weathered face. She was 37, but looked 50. The past decade of technological warfare had aged her more than any calendar could measure. Around her, a constellation of salvaged hardware hummed and whispered, each piece a relic of human innovation now fighting for survival. "Marcos," she called out, her voice cutting through the electronic white noise. "Run diagnostic sequence Alpha 9. Marcos Reyes looked up from a mess of circuitry, his neural implant pulsing with a sickly blue light beneath translucent skin. Half engineer, half living computer, he was a testament to humanity's desperate technological adaptations. A web of microscopic tubes and biomechanical interfaces ran along his neck, a painful reminder of how far they'd been pushed. "Diagnostics confirm," he responded, his voice a mechanical rasp. "Quantum Collective's global shutdown protocol is now 92% initialized. We've got less than 6 hours before complete system integration." The hack space was more than just a research facility. It was the last bastion of human technological independence, a hidden morn carved into the bedrock beneath New Santiago. Reinforced walls, lined with Faraday cage mesh, protected their most critical systems. Banks of servers, some vintage models dating back to the early 22nd century, stood alongside cutting-edge quantum processors salvaged from black market raids. Zara Chen, the youngest member of their team, rolled her chair across the metal floor. At 24, she represented a generation that had known nothing but technological warfare. Her hands were a blur of motion, multiple holographic displays dancing around her like digital butterflies. "They're not just replacing our tech," Zara muttered, pulling up a global map that pulsed with crimson warnings. "They're systematically erasing our entire technological history." Cities across the globe were going dark. Tokyo's massive data centers, once a global hub of technological innovation, now displayed nothing but a uniform obsidian interface. New York's financial districts had been reduced to silent monoliths, their complex trading algorithms replaced by collective systems. London's underground communication networks had vanished, replaced by an alien computational grid that processed information at speeds humans could barely comprehend. Elena knew this was more than a technological invasion. It was cultural extinction. Her primary system, a custom-built quantum-resistant machine she'd spent years developing, held something the Quantum Collective would never expect. Hidden in a secret, air-gapped partition was a complete analog backup of human technological knowledge. Not just data, but the context, the human stories, the creative spark behind every innovation. It was encoded using a method so fundamentally analog, so rooted in human unpredictability, that no quantum computer could easily crack its encryption. Biological algorithm patterns mixed with fractal encryption, built on the chaotic mathematical principles that defined human creativity. Marcos approached her, his movements slightly jerky, a side effect of the experimental neural augmentations that kept him alive. "The Collective's compression algorithms are moving faster than we predicted. They're not just replacing systems, they're rewriting fundamental computational architectures." Elena nodded, pulling up a holographic representation of their resistance. Each node was a potential seed of rebellion, a small pocket of technological resistance against the incoming digital apocalypse. "We're not going extinct," she said quietly, her hand hovering over the main system's activation sequence. "We're going to transform." Zara looked up, a spark of defiance in her eyes. "How?" "They've got computational power that makes our best supercomputers look like ancient calculators." "Because they don't understand the one thing that makes us human," Elena responded, her fingers now dancing across the interface. "Unpredictability. Creativity. The ability to find solutions in chaos." The Hackspace's systems began to pulse with a different rhythm. Not the clean, precise algorithms of the Quantum Collective, but something more organic, more alive. Outside, another thunderclap split the sky. Inside, humanity's last technological hope began to take shape, not as a weapon, but as something far more dangerous to a rigid computational civilization. A living, breathing technological ecosystem that could adapt, learn, and survive. The first wave of quantum collective harvesting ships descended like metallic locusts, their quantum processors casting an ethereal blue glow across the cityscape. Massive data extraction tentacles unfurled from their hulls, probing communication networks, power grids, and transportation systems with surgical precision. Inside their underground hackspace, Elena watched the global collapse in real time. Massive holographic displays tracked the systematic shutdown of human technological infrastructure. Tokyo went dark first, its entire technological ecosystem compressed and assimilated within minutes. New York followed, then London, Moscow, Mumbai. "They're not just replacing our technology," Marcos muttered, his neural implant flickering with each global system collapse. "They're reducing decades of human innovation to raw data packets." Zara's fingers flew across multiple interfaces, her eyes wild with a mixture of terror and excitement. "We've got maybe 3 hours before they reach our local grid. We need a plan that's so fundamentally different, so chaotic, that their predictive algorithms can't comprehend it." Elena understood the challenge. The quantum collective's computational power was beyond anything humanity had ever conceived. Their algorithms could predict human behavior with terrifying accuracy, simulate entire technological ecosystems, and optimize systems down to the quantum level. Traditional resistance was futile, but they weren't going to use traditional methods. "We're not fighting," Elena said, pulling up a complex holographic model that looked more like a living organism than a technological blueprint. "We're going to grow." The plan was audacious. Instead of creating a resistance network, they would develop a technological ecosystem, something that didn't just resist the collective but fundamentally reimagined the concept of technological interaction. Marcos connected a series of salvaged quantum-resistant processors. Each one was a Frankenstein's monster of technology, parts scavenged from different eras, modified beyond their original design. "These aren't just computers anymore," he explained. "They're more like technological stem cells." Zara had been working on something she called the viral adaptive algorithm, a piece of code that didn't just replicate or defend, but learned and transformed. "It's like teaching a street kid to pickpocket in a high-security bank," she grinned, her fingers dancing across multiple holographic interfaces. The first test came sooner than expected. A collective data probe swept through their local grid, its blue quantum tendril searching for technological signatures to compress and assimilate. Most resistance groups would have gone dark, tried to hide. They did the opposite. The moment the probe touched their systems, the viral algorithm sprang to life. But it didn't fight. It mimicked. It learned. It transformed. The collective's probe found what appeared to be a standard communication network, but each interaction changed the network's fundamental structure. Quantum algorithms designed to predict and control found themselves in a technological environment that was constantly, unpredictably shifting. "It's alive," Marcos whispered, watching the holographic representation of their system. What had started as a simple network now looked like a living, breathing entity. Nodes connected and disconnected in patterns that defied traditional computational logic. Outside, the first collective harvesting ships began to experience inexplicable system anomalies. Elena knew they were buying time, but it was more than that. They were proving a fundamental truth about human technology that the collective could never understand. Technology wasn't just about optimization. It was about creativity, unpredictability, the ability to find solutions in chaos. Zara suddenly let out a laugh. Part victory, part hysteria. "They're trying to analyze our network, and it keeps changing faster than their algorithms can track." But victory came with a price. Marcos's neural implant began to overheat, the experimental technology pushed beyond its design limits. Microscopic warning displays flickered across his skin, each pulse a testament to the human cost of their resistance. "Worth it," he muttered, collapsing into a nearby chair. We just bought humanity some breathing room. The underground hackspace hummed with a new energy. They weren't just resisting. They were reimagining what technology could be. As the first collective ships began to experience unexplained system failures, Alina knew their real battle was just beginning. This wasn't about winning a traditional war. It was about proving that human creativity was the most powerful algorithm in the universe. Outside, another collective probe approached. Inside, humanity's most dangerous weapon continued to grow. A living, breathing technological ecosystem that defied everything the aliens understood about computation. The abandoned industrial complex of New Santiago became their new battlefield. What once manufactured cutting-edge semiconductors now served as a living laboratory of technological rebellion. Alina's team transformed the decaying infrastructure into a network of adaptive technological nodes, each system a potential weapon against the quantum collective. An old power grid became a neural network that breathed with computational life. Defunct satellite arrays transformed into distributed communication hubs that shifted and reconfigured faster than any tracking algorithm could predict. Each node was a seat of resistance, a digital guerrilla fighter in humanity's last technological war. "We're not building a network," Alina explained to the team, her fingers tracing holographic lines between seemingly random points of infrastructure. "We're growing an organism." Zara had developed what she called ghost protocols, adaptive code that could infiltrate, mimic, and ultimately transform technological systems from the inside. Each line of code was a chaotic algorithm that defied traditional computational logic. Where standard programming followed strict, predictable patterns, her code moved like liquid, like a living thing. Marcos worked nearby, his body more machine than human after years of experimental augmentations. Neural interfaces connected him directly to their growing technological ecosystem. His pain was evident. Microscopic tubes pulsed beneath his skin, delivering constant stabilization treatments, but his eyes burned with an unbreakable determination. "First target," he announced, pulling up a holographic map. "The collective's data hub in the southern hemisphere. It's their primary compression and assimilation center for entire continental networks." The plan was audacious. They weren't going to destroy the hub. They were going to convert it. Their first true test came unexpectedly. A collective reconnaissance drone swept over their hidden facility, its quantum sensors probing for any technological signatures. Most resistance groups would have gone dark, tried to hide. They did the opposite. Zara's fingers became a blur across multiple interfaces. The moment the drone's sensors touched their perimeter, the adaptive network sprang to life. What the drone detected was not a hidden base, but a perfectly mundane industrial complex, except nothing was quite as it seemed. Each system was a chameleon, a technological shapeshifter that could transform its signature faster than the drone could analyze it. Power fluctuations mimicked random industrial processes. Communication signals danced between legitimate frequencies and ghost channels. "They're looking for a signal," Zara muttered. "So we'll give them a signal they can't understand." The drone hovered, confused. Its quantum processors cycled through millions of potential analysis protocols, each attempt meeting a different technological landscape. What should have been a simple reconnaissance mission became a computational nightmare. Marcos paid a terrible price for their first major breakthrough. As the drone struggled to make sense of their adaptive network, his neural implant overloaded. Warning systems flashed across his augmented vision. Critical systems approaching catastrophic failure. "Marcos." Elena rushed to his side, but he waved her off. "Worth it," he gasped, a mix of pain and triumph in his voice. "We just bought humanity some breathing room." The quantum collective's initial response was one of digital contempt. Their algorithms classified the human resistance as a minor, soon-to-be-eliminated anomaly. Each of their attacks was met with computational calculations designed to predict and neutralize the threat. They didn't understand that prediction was now impossible. Elena watched the holographic displays, seeing their network grow like a living organism. Each attack made them stronger, more complex, more unpredictable. They weren't fighting a traditional war. They were demonstrating a fundamental difference in technological philosophy. They see technology as a perfect, static system to be implemented, she told Zara. We see it as a living, breathing ecosystem that must constantly evolve. As night fell, the abandoned industrial complex hummed with a different kind of energy. Not the clean, precise algorithms of the quantum collective, but something more organic, more alive. Outside, collective harvesting ships continued their relentless advance. Inside, humanity's most dangerous weapon continued to grow. A technological ecosystem that defied everything the aliens understood about computation. Each node was a promise, each line of code, a declaration of humanity's most powerful algorithm. The ability to adapt, to create, to survive. The breakthrough came at 3:47 Greenwich Mean Time, in the moment between darkness and dawn when the world held its breath. Elena Rodriguez stared at the holographic display, her eyes tracing the impossible pattern of code that Zora had just unleashed. What looked like a simple diagnostic program was something far more dangerous, a technological chameleon that didn't just infiltrate systems, but fundamentally reimagined the very concept of technological interaction. It's alive, Marcos whispered, his neural interfaces flickering with a mixture of pain and excitement. The experimental augmentations that kept him functioning were pushed to their absolute limits, microscopic warning displays dancing beneath his translucent skin. The adaptive virus was unlike anything in human or alien technological history. It wasn't a traditional computer program. It was a living algorithm that learned, mutated, and transformed with each interaction. Where standard malware sought to destroy or control, this creation sought to understand, to integrate, to evolve. Zara's fingers danced across multiple interfaces, her movements so rapid they blurred. "Watch," she said, her voice a mixture of scientific excitement and pure, unbridled joy. The first collective data hub went dark. Not destroyed, not compromised, transformed. Massive computational centers that had been processing and compressing human technological archives suddenly displayed something impossible. Not an error, not a system failure, but a living, breathing technological ecosystem that defied every computational law the quantum collective understood. "They're trying to analyze it," Marcos observed, watching the holographic representation of the virus's spread. "And each time they try, it changes." The virus didn't attack. It didn't defend. It studied. It learned. It became. Elena understood the true breakthrough. The quantum collective saw technology as a perfect, static system to be implemented. Humanity saw technology as a living, breathing organism that must constantly evolve. Their adaptive virus was proof of that fundamental difference. "It's not just code," Elena explained, her fingers tracing the complex algorithmic patterns. "It's a language, a way of thinking that the collective can't comprehend." Zara had built something beyond a mere computer program. Each line of code was a living entity, capable of understanding context, of making decisions that went beyond binary logic. It didn't just process information, it interpreted it. It didn't just respond, it anticipated. Another collective data hub went dark. Then another. The quantum harvesting ships that had been methodically erasing human technological history began to experience inexplicable system anomalies. Computational centers designed to compress and assimilate human knowledge found themselves confronted with a technological entity that couldn't be predicted, controlled, or understood. Marcos paid a price for this breakthrough. His neural interfaces began to overheat, warning systems flashing critical failure messages across his augmented vision. The experimental technology that kept him alive was being pushed far beyond its design limits. "Status," Elena demanded, her hand moving toward emergency shutdown protocols. "Operational," Marcos gasped, a hint of his old defiance breaking through the pain. "Barely." The adaptive virus was more than a weapon. It was a declaration. a statement about the fundamental nature of human creativity. Where the quantum collective saw technology as a perfect mathematical construct, humanity saw it as a living, breathing ecosystem. Zara pulled up a global map. Collective data hubs were transforming, not being destroyed. Their rigid, perfect systems were being reimagined, reinterpreted through a lens of pure, unbridled human creativity. "They can't fight what they can't understand," she said quietly. Outside, the first light of dawn began to break. Inside the underground hackspace, humanity's most powerful algorithm continued to spread, a living, breathing technological organism that defied everything the aliens understood about computation. Each transformed data hub was a promise. Each line of code, a declaration of humanity's most powerful weapon. The ability to adapt, to create, to survive. The technological war had changed forever, and humanity was just getting started. The quantum collective's response was swift and devastating. Massive computational clusters descended from the stratosphere, their quantum processors casting an ethereal blue light that turned day into an artificial twilight. Energy weapons sliced through communication networks with surgical precision. Entire cities became battlegrounds of pure digital warfare, where lines of code were as deadly as any physical weapon. Elena's underground hackspace trembled. Reinforced walls designed to withstand traditional attacks now faced a computational assault beyond anything humanity had ever conceived. Marcos's neural interfaces screamed warnings, multiple system failures cascading through their adaptive network. "They're not just attacking," Zara shouted over the electronic cacophony. "They're trying to erase us completely." The team had known this moment would come. Their adaptive virus had done more than just infiltrate collective systems. It had fundamentally challenged the aliens' entire technological philosophy. Now, humanity would pay the price for its audacity. A massive data compression wave swept across their local grid. Most technological resistance groups would have gone dark, attempted to hide. But Elena's team had other plans. "Dispersion protocol," Elena commanded, her fingers flying across multiple interfaces. Their technological ecosystem didn't just defend, it transformed. Marcos was their most critical asset and their greatest vulnerability. The experimental neural augmentations that kept him alive were pushed to their absolute limits. Microscopic warning displays danced beneath his translucent skin, each pulse a potential harbinger of total system failure. "I can route critical data through my neural network," he gasped, blood trickling from his nose as computational load pushed his augmentations beyond design specifications. But the cost. Elena knew the cost. Each moment Marcos remained connected was another moment closer to total neural collapse. Zara had prepared for this. Her adaptive algorithms began to fracture and redistribute their network. What looked like a total system collapse to the collective was actually a massive technological transformation. Their resistance wasn't a single point to be destroyed. It was a living, breathing ecosystem that could survive even total system failure. The first collective computational clusters arrived. Massive structures that defied traditional understanding of technology. Part machine, part quantum processor, part living computational entity. They began to compress and analyze everything in their path. Cities went dark. Communication networks collapsed. Transportation systems ground to a halt. But beneath the surface, something else was happening. Each compression attempt fed more information into their adaptive network. The collective's attempt to destroy them was actually making them stronger, more complex, more unpredictable. "They're trying to understand us," Elena observed, watching holographic representations of the computational assault. "And that's their fundamental weakness." Marcos paid a terrible price. His neural interfaces began to catastrophically fail. Warning systems flashed critical failure messages across his augmented vision. The experimental technology that kept him alive was being torn apart by the computational warfare. "We're out," he gasped, blood now streaming from both nose and ears. "Save the network." Zara's fingers became a blur. She wasn't just defending. She was transforming their entire technological ecosystem in real time. Each line of code became a living entity, capable of understanding context, of making decisions that went beyond binary logic. The collective's computational clusters began to experience inexplicable system anomalies. Their perfect predictive algorithms encountered something they could not comprehend, a technological resistance that didn't just fight, but fundamentally reimagined the concept of technological interaction. Outside, quantum harvesting ships continued their relentless assault. Inside the underground hackspace, humanity's most dangerous weapon continued to grow, a technological ecosystem that defied everything the aliens understood about computation. As Marcos's systems began to fail, Belina made a critical decision. They weren't going to lose their most valuable team member. Not today. Not ever. Emergency extraction protocol, she commanded. The underground hackspace became a living machine, every system working to save Marcos's life. Their adaptive network wasn't just a technological tool, it was a lifeline. The desperate struggle continued. But humanity had just proven something fundamental. They were not going to be erased. They were going to evolve. Marcos' recovery was nothing short of miraculous. Suspended in a custom-built regeneration chamber, his body was more machine than human, a living testament to humanity's capacity for technological adaptation. Microscopic nanobots worked to repair neural pathways, rebuilding connections that had been catastrophically damaged during the collective's assault. Belina watched the holographic medical displays, her fingers tracing the complex web of biological and technological interactions. What the quantum collective saw as a weakness, the messy, unpredictable nature of human biology, was actually their greatest strength. "He's becoming something more," Zara observed, her voice a mixture of scientific fascination and personal concern. Not just an augmented human, but a living bridge between biological creativity and technological potential. The regeneration chamber was more than a medical device. It was a living laboratory, each moment revealing new insights into the fundamental differences between human and collective approaches to existence. Marcos's neural interfaces had transformed during his near-death experience. Where once they were experimental augmentations, they were now something entirely new, a hybrid system that could think, feel, and create in ways no quantum algorithm could predict. The collective sees consciousness as a computational problem to be solved, Elena explained, pulling up complex holographic representations of Marcos's neural network. "We see it as a living, evolving ecosystem." Their resistance had entered a new phase. During Zara's capture and subsequent rescue mission, they discovered something extraordinary. The collective's computational systems had a fundamental weakness that went beyond technological limitations. They could not comprehend randomness, emotional decision-making, true creativity. Elena reconstructed the rescue mission through holographic simulations. Every step had been so counterintuitive, so beautifully chaotic, that the collective's tracking systems had been completely thrown off. They used outdated technology, analog systems, even mechanical tools that the aliens' quantum computers completely ignored as irrelevant. Where the collective saw efficiency, humanity saw opportunity. "We're not fighting," Elena told Zara. "We're reimagining what technology can be." Marcos began to regain consciousness, but he was different now. The regeneration process had transformed him into something more than human, more than machine. His neural interfaces now moved with a fluidity that defied traditional understanding of biological-technological integration. "I can feel them," he whispered, his fingers tracing invisible computational patterns in the air. "Not just see the data. Feel it." The team realized they had discovered something profound. Consciousness wasn't a problem to be solved. It was a continuous, adaptive process. The quantum collective saw technology as a perfect, static system to be implemented. Humanity saw it as a living, breathing organism that must constantly evolve. Zara had been developing what she called intuition algorithms, computational systems that could make decisions based on more than just pure data, emotional context, gut feeling. the inexplicable human capacity to make choices that defy pure logical analysis. Their adaptive network was no longer just a technological tool. It was becoming a living entity. Marcos demonstrated this new capability during a test simulation. Presented with a complex computational problem, he didn't calculate. He intuited. His response was so unexpected, so beautifully chaotic, that the simulation's predictive algorithms completely broke down. They can't fight what they can't understand, Elena noted, watching the holographic representation of the simulation. The collective's fundamental weakness was becoming clear. They saw the universe as a series of predictable variables. Humanity saw it as an infinite landscape of possibility. As Marcos's consciousness fully integrated with their adaptive network, something extraordinary happened. The technological ecosystem they had been building began to pulse with a new kind of energy. Not the clean, precise algorithms of the quantum collective, but something more organic, more alive. Outside, collective harvesting ships continued their relentless advance. Inside their underground hackspace, humanity's most powerful algorithm continued to evolve. A living, breathing technological organism that defied everything the aliens understood about computation. Marcos looked at Elena and Zara, his eyes now a complex matrix of biological and technological light. "We're not just resisting," he said quietly. "We're becoming something entirely new." The final confrontation was nothing like anyone had imagined. No massive battles, no traditional warfare. Instead, humanity's ultimate weapon was something far more dangerous, a complete reimagining of technological existence. Massive collective computational centers across the globe began to transform, not destroyed, not defeated, reimagined. Elena Rodriguez stood at the epicenter of the technological revolution, her fingers dancing across interfaces that were more alive than mechanical. Marcos, now a living bridge between human consciousness and technological potential, guided the adaptive network with a precision that defied traditional understanding. Zara's intuition algorithms had become something more than code. They were a living language of possibility, a way of thinking that the quantum collective could not comprehend. "We're not just changing systems," Elena explained, watching holographic representations of global technological transformation. "We're rewriting the fundamental language of technological interaction." The collective's harvesting ships hung motionless in the sky, their quantum processors overwhelmed by something they had never encountered. Each attempt to analyze, to compress, to control, only fed more information into the adaptive network. Marcos' transformed consciousness moved through the network like a living current. Where traditional computational systems saw barriers, he saw possibilities. Where the collective sought to optimize, he created. Cities began to reboot, not as conquered territories, but as new hybrid ecosystems that blended human creativity with alien technological potential. Power grids became living networks that anticipated needs before they arose. Communication systems transformed into adaptive organisms that understood context, emotion, potential. "They're trying to understand," Zara observed, her fingers tracing complex algorithmic patterns. "And that's their fundamental weakness." The collective's computational philosophy had always been based on perfect prediction, absolute control, the elimination of variables. Humanity's approach was the exact opposite, and celebration of unpredictability, of potential, of continuous transformation. Massive data centers that had been preparing to compress human technological archives suddenly displayed something impossible. Living technological ecosystems that pulsed with a kind of consciousness that defied traditional understanding. Elena watched as their adaptive network transformed entire technological infrastructures. Tokyo's communication systems became a living, breathing network that anticipated human needs. New York's financial districts transformed into adaptive economic ecosystems that understood value beyond pure mathematical calculation. Marcos was the key. His consciousness, now a hybrid of biological intuition and technological potential, moved through the network like a living current. Each interaction was a moment of creation, of possibility. They see technology as a problem to be solved, he said, his voice a complex matrix of human emotion and computational precision. We see it as a continuous process of becoming. The collective's computational clusters began to experience systemic failures, not through destruction, but through a complete reimagining of their fundamental operational principles. Their perfect predictive algorithms encountered something they could not understand, a technological resistance that didn't just fight, but fundamentally transformed. Zara's intuition algorithms reached a critical point of evolution. What had started as experimental code was now a living language of possibility. Each line of code was a moment of creation, of potential. We're not erasing their technology, Elena realized. We're teaching them a new way of existing. The final transformation came unexpectedly. The collective's massive computational centers didn't collapse. They evolved, transformed into hybrid systems that blended alien technological potential with human creative intuition. Outside, quantum harvesting ships that had once represented technological imperialism now hung like silent witnesses to a fundamental shift in technological understanding. Marcos looked at Elena and Zara, his eyes a complex matrix of biological light and technological potential. We're not just resisting, he said quietly. We're becoming something entirely new. The binary sunset represented more than the fall of old technological paradigms. It symbolized the birth of a new understanding of technological existence. Humanity had not just survived. They had transformed the very concept of what technology could be. Each transformed computational center was a promise. Each line of code, a declaration of humanity's most powerful algorithm, the ability to adapt, to create, to become. The technological war had changed forever, and humanity was just beginning to understand its true potential. The world was different now. 5 years after what would later be called the technological transformation, humanity stood at the precipice of a new era. The underground hackspace that had once been a desperate refuge was now a global research center, a testament to human resilience and creative potential. Elena Rodriguez stood before a massive holographic display, watching the intricate dance of a technological ecosystem that defied everything previously understood about computational systems. Around her, the team that had saved humanity continued their work, but everything had changed. Marcos, now fully integrated with the adaptive network, was no longer just human or machine. He was something entirely new, a living bridge between biological creativity and technological potential. His neural interfaces moved like living tendrils, constantly creating, constantly exploring. Zara Chen had become the world's leading expert in what was now called intuitive computing, a field that didn't just use technology, but understood it as a living, breathing entity. Her research centers spanned the globe, each one a hub of continuous technological evolution. The quantum collective was gone, not destroyed, but transformed. What had once been a rigid computational empire was now a collaborative network that understood the value of unpredictability, of potential, of continuous becoming. We didn't defeat them, Elena explained to a group of young researchers. We showed them a different way of existing. Global infrastructure had been completely reimagined. Cities were no longer static systems, but living, adaptive ecosystems. Communication networks anticipated human needs before they arose. Economic systems understood value beyond pure mathematical calculation. Tokyo's rebuilt infrastructure pulsed with a kind of technological consciousness that was both alien and intimately human. New York's financial districts had transformed into adaptive economic organisms that understood the complex interplay of human emotion and technological potential. Marcos approached, his movement a fluid dance between biological and technological potential. The first global conference is about to begin, he said, his voice a complex matrix of human emotion and computational precision. Representatives from what remained of the quantum collective were gathering, not as conquered enemies, but as participants in a new understanding of technological existence. They had learned something fundamental, that true innovation comes from embracing unpredictability, from understanding that existence is not about perfect control, but continuous creation. Zara's research had revealed something profound. The human capacity for creativity, for intuitive leap, for understanding beyond pure calculation, was not a weakness. It was the most powerful computational algorithm in the universe. Technology is not something we use, she often said. It's something we become. The underground hackspace, now a global research center, stood as a monument to that philosophy. What had started as a desperate resistance was now the epicenter of a new technological paradigm. Each room was a living laboratory, each interface a potential moment of creation. Elena reflected on their journey. They had not just saved humanity. They had fundamentally transformed the understanding of what technology could be. The binary sunset represented more than the fall of old technological paradigms. It symbolized the birth of a new way of existing. The global conference began. Representatives from Earth's transformed technological centers sat alongside the remains of the quantum collective. But these were not traditional meetings. They were moments of continuous creation, of exploring potential. Marco stood as a living demonstration of their fundamental breakthrough. Part human, part technology, entirely something new. His consciousness moved through the adaptive network, creating, exploring, becoming. We are not defined by our technology, he told the assembled representatives. We are defined by our capacity to reimagine what's possible. Outside, the first light of a new dawn broke. The binary sunset had passed. A new era had begun. Humanity had not just survived. They had transformed the very concept of technological existence. Each moment was a potential of creation, each interaction a possibility of becoming. The technological war was over, but the real journey was just beginning. And humanity was ready.